got to ride on the sea. He must come in like the answers to every question. That's what he need understand. Black man, come down and sit beside us. You can share all that we have. And like the stage he's got to play on, life is a role he's pinning down. Life attracts him just like a magnet. Or was that the other way around? Black man, come down, come on down and sit beside us. You are welcome to all we own.
Good morning, WVON listeners. This is George Wright from the Partnership Show. I specifically played that song because we have a special guest in the audience, or in the studio, I should say, with us, as opposed to on the line. And Gil Scott-Heron coined the phrase, "Black man, come on down and sit beside us. You are welcome to all we own." I am joined in the studio, obviously, with my partner, Danny Marshall. Danny is getting situated, but my special guest on the Partnership Show, sponsored by the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. Once again, WVON callers, our show is always participatory. Call in at 773-591-1690. Our special guest in the studio is Brian Nichols, Senior Vice President, Olive Harvey College. Brian, welcome to the Partnership Show.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Really looking forward to just having some great dialogue this morning and really talking about just education and workforce and representing Olive Harvey College, located on the southeast side of Chicago.
So we are going to have a great show, Brian. We're going to ask some provocative questions. We're going to hopefully have some callers, some listeners call in, and I think it's going to be a great show. So, Danny, as is usual, please explain to our listening audience, what is the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership?
Absolutely. So who is the partnership? You guys have asked us, and we continue to remind you that we are a nonprofit umbrella organization that operates the largest publicly funded workforce system in the nation. We serve all of Chicago and Cook County. We have a network of nearly 100 agencies in Chicago and Cook County that offers job search assistance and training assistance, largely at no cost to those that we serve. If you or somebody you know is interested in our services, reach us online at levelupajc.org or by phone at 800-720-2515. Back to you, George.
And thank you, Danny. And once again, want to give a quick shout out to the beginning of Black History Month. It's always amazing to me how I guess we get 1 month out of the year to celebrate Black history. And, you know, again, as my opening song depicted, Gil Scott-Heron said, "Black man, come on down." I think we should come down every single day of the year. And I have two black men, so welcome, black men.
Honored to be here
Thank you,
two other black men.
So, Danny, we actually have some data, if you will, that talks about the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership's efforts relative to African Americans, how they benefit from the services that the partnership provides, along with its affiliates, along with its neighborhood and community-based organizations.
Absolutely. I just want to lift up three of those facts during Black History Month. That 63% actually of the adults that we serve are Black. And then 67% of them are employed 4 quarters after exit. That's right. We serve our job seekers for about 4 quarters, and then we continue to follow them after they've achieved employment. And so 4 quarters after they've exited, over 67% of them are still employed. Dislocated workers, all right? These are people who have lost their jobs, been laid off, or the company downsized or company relocated. 49.4% of those customers were Black, and 73% of them were employed 4 quarters after exit. That means that we connected people with some stable career type of employment opportunities. Youth. Over 61% of our youth are Black. 74% of them are employed in or post-secondary education 4 quarters after exits. If that's not enough to lift up the work that we're serving in our community, then I don't know what else is, George. Those numbers are great, and they just remind people that we are a great resource for you, Black and all. Come see us. Again, levelupajc.org.
Thank you, Danny, and once again, so fortunate to be here, especially as we start Black History Month. So let's jump into our special guest, once again, Brandon Nichols, Senior Vice President, Olive Harvey College. So, Brandon, first question is, if you had a minute, tell us about your personal journey and how you came to Olive Harvey, and then we're going to jump into some programmatic stuff. But give us a sense of who Brandon is and how this journey ended up having you sitting in the WVON studio on the Partnership Show.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So, again, everyone, my name is Dr. Brandon Nichols. I serve as a Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs at Olive Harvey College. And I've been at Olive Harvey a little over 4 years. I started in November 2019, but Olive Harvey doesn't just represent just the college, but the community. It's the same community that I grew up in. So I grew up, I'm a Chicagoan, grew up on the southeast side, right off 87th and Jeffrey. So I was able to really, take advantage of the opportunity of, working in the community in which I serve. I have a beautiful wife, 3 kids, and, they all, work and live in the area. So me working at Olive Harvey College is not just about what I do at the school as far as my profession, but it's really, we think about how do we give back to the community. This is my service to the community. I was able to, graduate with my bachelor's from the University of Illinois years back in sociology, and actually I relocated to D.C. to receive my master's and doctorate, and after that, I came back home.
Nice.
It's about coming back home. I moved right back to the same neighborhood I grew up in. I've been with City Colleges a little over 11 years. I first started off at Kennedy King College. Then I was at our district office, and like I mentioned, most recently working at OHC. But I love the college because it's not just a college, it's not just a job, it's home. And this is my service to the community. We always talk about how do we give back to the community. You invest in your community, work in your community, you give back to your community. And I have my family that's also part of that community. So really, this is community work. This is not just about, a job or a profession, me working at the college. It's really about giving folks opportunity. My nephew is scheduled to graduate, if all goes well this May. So he's a student at OHC. So it's really about how we're able to connect our students to education, but prepare them either for transfer or to enter the workforce.
Thank you. So, Brandon, we're going to now jump into some programming, and once again, WVON callers at 773-591-1690 on the Partnership Show. So I want to jump into, I think the theme of this show for me, Danny and Brandon, is going to be called Who Knew? Now, let me kind of repeat that. The theme of this show, I think, is going to be termed, in my mind, Who Knew?
Who knew?
Who knew? So, as an example, who knew that the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership would receive $18.5 million from the Department of Commerce to start this program called the Good Jobs Challenge?
Wow.
Who knew?
18 million.
18.5.
Facts.
Don't forget the 0.5 for this program called the Good Jobs Challenge. Who knew? And part of that program, I think a major part of it really is called this backbone type of organizational structure where Olive Harvey was selected to be the backbone for the TDL, Transportation, Distribution, and Logistics.
Well, of course.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe for some callers it doesn't make sense. Because I actually participated in this rollout kickout event where the Deputy Secretary of Commerce came in from D.C. and I spoke at the event, and it was great, and I was amazed. I hadn't been at Olive Harvey for years. Mm-hmm. And when I saw this facility, it was, who knew?
It's beautiful.
Who knew this was here? So, Brandon, talk to us about the facility. Talk to us about the changes that have been taking place with Olive Harvey, and talk to our listening audience about some of the new things that are happening in terms of facility and have happened, which now can support these students that actually are looking for careers, specifically in the TDL space.
That's good.
Yeah. So we'll start a little bit with the Good Jobs and talk about all the things that is related to that. So with the Good Jobs Challenge, this was something that was a great opportunity in partnership with Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, as mentioned earlier, in the United States Economic Development Administration. So this is really allowing Olive Harvey College to be the backbone, the leader of all things that relates to the sector of transportation, distribution, and logistics. Honestly, no one really talks about TDL or supply chain until really the pandemic. I think now supply chain has become more of a household name, but really allows us to be able to lead not just the work at the college, but also the work of the entire Cook County, so the city of Chicago and the related suburban areas, on how we're able to work with employment partners to define what curriculum is needed, what nuances are happening in the industry, and how we're able to train our students through educational training and prepare them for the workforce, for what's happening right now and for future jobs. My president, Dr. Hollingsworth, will always say that we need to be student ready, but also how we're able to, and along with our partners, to develop pandemic-proof careers, right? I think over, this global pandemic, it allowed us to really kind of revisit that. How can we ensure that we're preparing our students for the global marketplace? Mm-hmm. So all things that relates to transportation, distribution, and logistics, we offer aviation maintenance and technician, along with sheet metal, in which we partner with AAR Corp., which is one of the partners that has been part of the convener space. And what we do is Olive Harvey, we're the convener to bring these partners together. So we have students that are able to complete a 10-week sheet metal program, or they're able to then transition into our college credit program to earn a stackable credential of a basic certificate, or an associate of applied science, in order to enter the workforce. But those partners are able to inform us about what the nuances that are needed right now based on current demand. Mm-hmm. Same thing right now that, as far as the partners in relationship to the partnership with CDL. CDL all falls under TDL. So we think about commercial drivers training for Class A, which we're talking about semi-trucks, and also buses. There's a bus shortage. We hear about it all the time with school buses, with CTA, with PACE. So PACE and CTA are actually one of our primary partners. We have 3 aspects in which we work with Chicago Transportation Authority. They have a second chance program for anybody that's been just as involved and they work for CTA. They also come to Olive Harvey College in order to earn a commercial license permit. This allows us a possible opportunity for upskill to then be not just a bus servicer to kind of, service the bus, but also to be a bus operator. You think about it. You can't work on a bus if you're not able to move it.
For sure.
You need at least at minimum that permit. And also for just general population of folks wanting to enter the workforce for bus driving, CTA actually recommends individuals, candidates, in order to get their commercial license permit. We send them back to CTA with the opportunity for them to work for them. Same thing with PACE as well. Some of the other aspects.
So let me jump in quickly, because I want to ask you. I want to make sure that our listening audience can jump into this, because there's a long litany of programs.
Correct.
But one of the things that's jumping out at me, Brandon, and obviously, Danny, I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well, is that you keep using the word partnership.
That is
partnership
correct.
with CTA, partnership with PACE. Some of the challenges with our community is that partnership is really just a cute cliche. we all go back in our corners and we do great work. But partnership is about bringing ourselves out of our corners, sometimes out of our comfort zones, and getting in the center of the ring and working together. And it's more than just a word. So you described all these programs, and Danny, you have been working with the partnership for many years, and you understand what I'm talking about when I say true partnership.
For sure.
Because true partnership is more than just a litany of programs.
Yeah.
True partnerships has to start, in my opinion, with the word why. Danny, why do we stress partnerships? And Brandon, why is partnerships important for the work that ultimately benefits the students that come to Olive Harvey? And once again, who knew?
Can I be honest? I think it goes back to what you mentioned with the partnership, that it's not just being transactional, but really transformational.
That's good.
On how we're able to kind of understand what are the current demands, as mentioned earlier, but how can not just Olive Harvey College, because this particular leading the TDL sector for the Good Jobs Challenge, this relates to everything that relates to employment for the Cook County area. So how we're able to ensure that this is not a secret. That this is no longer a best-kept secret, that this is something that is known throughout. So really it's about being transformational on what jobs are available.
Pushing back on who knew.
Yes, what are the trends?
Right.
You know, where are the gaps at? One of the most recent things you could say right now when we think about the automotive field is really about electric vehicle, green jobs, right? So how we're able to identify partners that's willing to say that, you know what's the new thing that's happening, how we could train people in order to be readily available to enter this new field.
That's good.
One being electric vehicle, Rivian.
With the partnership of?
Yes.
With Rivian.
Yes.
Who knew?
Nice segue, right?
Right.
So
Who knew that Rivian is at Olive Harvey College?
Phrase of the day, who knew?
Who knew? So, Danny, jump in, because, once again, partnership for us, our word says Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership.
Yeah.
We call ourselves the partnership because CCWP is really not a direct service provider. We are working with over 100 community-based organizations and affiliates that actually deliver these services, connecting job seekers and career seekers to career providers, which can only happen if you have partnership.
Exactly.
So from your lens, why is partnership so important for our community?
For sure. And you asked why. And I think it's important for us to involve partners because, as you mentioned, George, we can't do it alone, right? So it means, just like Brandon was mentioning, while, the partnership remains the leader, LCO, if you will, for a lot of the projects that we have, the reality is we don't deliver those services directly. So we connect with community-based organizations, those groups that are already delivering services. And maybe we can add this to the service that they deliver, thereby expanding their capacity, thereby expanding our own footprint in the communities that we serve. And so that's why we partner with other agencies that's already doing the work so that we can, lift up the work that they're doing, including the city colleges, and then lift up the work that we're doing as a group that's bringing these resources from the city, from the county, from the state to the local agencies and to the local communities that we serve. Otherwise, people would not know that we exist.
So what I'm hearing you say in terms of the why is that the partnership is not a direct service provider. Once again, we depend on making sure that partners like Olive Harvey, city colleges, our community-based organizations are delivering those services because they are in connection with the ultimate beneficiaries.
Exactly.
Brandon, what I hear you saying around the why is because it's the notion around being transformational versus transactional. So then that leads to a further, why would city colleges? Because here's a myth, right? And we're going to dispel this myth. Most people think that city colleges is all about transactions. I just go there. I go there for a couple years. I probably won't get a great education. And then I got to maybe transition. And it was a fallback because I didn't go to a 4-year institution in the first place.
Wow.
It's a fallback on this, but then I'll go to that maybe. You're saying, no, that is not what City Colleges is about. It's about being transformational and connecting people where they are. It sounds like to me that what you're saying is transformation starts with what many call a human-centered design, or you're looking at making sure that your beneficiaries, your students, ultimately drive your programs.
Absolutely.
Speak to that.
And if you think about it, the community, so being human-centered, really being community-centered, and really looking at not what we do is just truly education to get a certificate or degree, but really forecasting what the community needs and how the community can be a part of it. So I know we talked a lot about the industry partners, but it's also, as far as the Good Jobs Challenge, there's community partners as part of this as well. When you think about your Urban League, they're also a part of this. YWCA, Youth Job Center. So it's so many other community partners that's part of this. Chatham Business Association. So it's about identifying the educating partner, identifying the industry partner, and the community partner on how we can all come together. Specifically, you think about Olive Harvey, that this now pushes us beyond just looking at education, but really us being more transformational on how we could further support our community. The college itself, really, I look at it almost as a one-stop shop. We have child care services that are on site, in which we provide daycare between the ages of 2 to 5. Okay. We have a middle college that's also on site that, again, who knew? This middle college provides education, high school equivalency diploma for students between the ages of 16 to 21. Then, of course, we have a continuing education classes along with college credit. So really, you look at, we have almost every age group. We offer swim classes that's for all ages. So really, when you think about not just the Good Jobs Challenge, but really how can we incorporate what we do as educational partners and then ensure that we're informing the industry partners, informing the community partners, and how all of us as partners can come together, our transfer partners. When you think about Chicago State, UIC, Governor State, those are our partners as well. So how can we all work together, because we all have the common vision of being transformational to serve the community?
Right. So think about it from this lens, right? And once again, what you'll hear from me is this constant reminder of who knew. So I came out, put the feet on the ground, and I saw, on the one hand, I saw people getting tested for their CDLs. Right, so they're driving around outside this great facility, which I hadn't been in a while, and it's a state-of-the-art facility. Yeah. So I'm looking outside, and you got, people testing for their CDLs. Then I go inside, and you got diesel mechanics being trained. Then I go to the other side, and you got people being trained to work on electric vehicles. And then I go on the other side, and people being trained to be bicycle mechanics. So it goes from soup to nuts. And who knew? So I'm leaving with this notion in my mind. I never knew this was here. Yeah. And I believe, this is my story and I'm sticking to it, that most of our WVON listening audience probably doesn't know the types of service and the quality of services that are happening. I'll say one other thing, and then I want to get you all's opinion on another question I'm going to ask. When I go to these events, the thing that I do different in most cases is I love to hang out with Dr. Hollingsworth, but I talk. Awesome. She's awesome. But I also talked to the security guard that was standing there, who stood off on the side and seemed to not be engaged. And I started talking to him about his experience of working at Olive Harvey. And one of the things he said, George, it's a challenge, but it's a great challenge, because when we open up our doors and open up our registration for CDL, the lines are out the door. Wow. He said we can't take the number of people that actually come to sign up. So there is a sector of our population that would probably not be thinking who knew. They know because they're there. So what say ye? This is the question I have in terms of making sure, and I want to, before you answer that, we're going to get a caller on the line. But before you answer this question, think about it. What should we all be doing to make sure that this is not a well-kept secret? Hold that thought. Janice, are you on the line? I see we have a call.
I'm a little older now, and one time I tried to go to the city colleges. I was much younger. And the treatment I got there wasn't so nice, and it wasn't the counselors. It was the little people they had up front playing around and things. But I want to know, for the CDL, what percentage is black, Latino, and white? Because I noticed in a lot of, like, the nursing programs and things, that a lot of times black students don't benefit from these programs. And now when I look at people saying these things, I want to know what percentage is black, how many on the waiting list, how many Latinos on the waiting list, and how many others. Because we pay for everything, but we don't benefit from it. Wow. And that's the point I've become. And I think anything that goes on in the black community, now I'm black, I'm not African American, I'm a descendant of slaves. I want to know what percentage of our children, not foreigners, but the descendants of slaves, are benefiting from these programs.
Thanks for your call, Janice. So,
And
Brandon,
how many blacks on the waiting list and other ethnic groups with the truck driving? And also, are you doing anything with welding? Because that's something that's open. And you know our blacks are not doing construction work and working on the roads either.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks for your call, Janice.
Bye-bye.
So, Brandon, you want to talk about the demographics in terms of the people that are being serviced by Olive Harvey, to Janice's question?
Yes, I have two responses. One that speaks to Olive Harvey College, which is where I work, and then also a more kind of global ancestor speaks to city colleges. So Olive Harvey College, we know, Southeast side, recent years always been a historically black neighborhood. We serve roughly approximately 68% of our students are African American. We're considered a predominantly black institution, in which supports a lot of our funding in which we talk about through Department of Education. I think one of the things you mentioned earlier about the aviation program, the actual airplane, we have a Cessna 345 that actually is in the actual facility that was purchased through our predominantly black institutions grant.
Wait a minute now. Hold on. So I saw the plane.
Yes.
Took a picture by it.
Yes.
You're saying that program was supported by HBCUs?
Through our predominantly black institutions grant that we have through the Department of Education. So
Got it.
even though we're not considered HBCU far as historical, but because it's primarily for 4-year institutions, us being a 2-year, we're a predominantly black community college.
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? Because when we think of HBCUs, of course, it represents the historical black colleges and universities, but when we speak about community colleges,
Right.
that's where we fit in at. So as a predominantly black institution, as far as Hispanic, we have an emerging HSI as far as roughly about 25%. But for Olive Harvey College, a lot of our programming really focuses on our neighborhood in which we reflect, which is blacks,
Right.
African Americans. For city colleges, we all have an overall equity goal that we're focusing on right now and really calling out on how we could better support our black students, primarily our African American students, our men. Myself being a man.
Right.
Yeah.
And many of the men that we see, that's not just something that's happening in Chicago, but across the United States in higher education, on how we can have more men, black men, that are part of education. So what we've been trying to do when you think about CDL, when you think about electric vehicle repair, for some of our colleges, also barber, and a lot of these programs that we're trying to be very intentional by creating programs that we know that we're able to attract our black men, but how can we nurture them? So part of what we did last year, which we had a male summit, minority male summit that primarily focused on black and brown men. And this was us be able to have conversations, to be able to discuss how we as men can better support each other and what struggles we have that goes beyond just the classroom.
Right.
I think that if you think about us being black men, it's not just about what's happening within our education, but really what's happening in our community.
Absolutely. Let's get another call on the line. Deborah, I see you've been holding. If you're there, you're on WVON.
Thank you, and blessings that will come during this Black History Month. We need to make more history because it's been a concerted effort to shut down our schools that have the names of our black heroes. Thank you for putting out that information about the aviations. And Miss Janice, I wish to leave my number for her. There have been an effort, again, there were nurses under Bobby Rush's legislative to bring in Filipino nurses, which sidelined black nurses here. So thank you for what you're doing. And I just pray that we're onto a new beginning, because our civil, political, and religious leaders, they didn't do us any good these last few decades. So, sir, thank you. Miss Janice, I'm leaving my number. Thank you so much for accepting my call.
Thank you,
God
Deborah.
bless.
Thank you for your comment. We have another caller that's been holding. Brother Hall, if that's you, you're on the line with WVON in the Partnership Show.
Yeah, Brother George.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, man. First of all, I had my commentary for this week. I actually called in to commend and thank you and the panel for fighting this fight. See, as Deborah just told you, we've been lacking of for the last 20 or 30 years, and it's not that we could have not got it. But the fact of the matter is that there was no one fighting for us. Very few if they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to call this morning to say thank you. Keep up the good work. They had a round table the other day, I believe on Friday. I was disappointed because you wasn't a part of that. And this is what we have to do, brother. We have to bring the real shakers to the table. And I urge you to keep it up from a dry bones perspective. Please keep it up. We're listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Hall. I think that the one thing, Brandon, you mentioned, and certainly, there's three sides to every story, as they say, right? It's your side, my side, and the truth. And while I think our listeners have brought up a very, very vitally important point, right? We need more opportunities for our people to take advantage of them.
For sure.
But the shows has this undertone to it that says, who knew? So whose responsibility ultimately is it to know? And I think that we also share in that responsibility to seek out opportunities, to figure out where they are and to take advantage of them. So at the end of the day, once again, the question I asked before we jumped our callers in, which were very, very good callers, I think that we got some really, really insightful messages from all of our callers. How can we actually make sure that we are actually ensuring that the message is out there?
That's good.
That we're doing the best we can to inform people. We started, Danny, you remember this Level Up campaign,
sure.
Which was really kind of directed from our director of communications at the partnership, because we saw that there was an opportunity, if you will, to make sure that people understood the opportunities that were out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once we make sure that those opportunities are out there, then the shift of responsibility goes to those individuals who can benefit from them. And so as I look at it, right, I look at data points that 85% of all college students, and I don't know if this number holds true in the community colleges. The data I saw was 4 institutions. 85% of those African Americans in college are female. 15% are male.
I can believe that.
So when I started off the show with Gil Scott-Heron, Black Man Come Down, we need to make sure that our black men, and you talked about being intentional about not only African Americans, but what segments of the African American population are really lacking behind. Not in terms of maybe not being aware, but these socioeconomic issues that cause them to have these barriers that are, manifest themselves in this data. So how can we do everything that we can do to make sure that we are getting the word out there so that we mitigate this risk of who knew?
I would still say, the best way to kind of share information, word of mouth is still something that is very effective in what we're doing right now. So more of this.
You mean word of social media?
That as well. But I think being able to be front-facing with not just the youth, but just folks of our community of all ages. What's the saying? Each one teach one, right? So I think the more that we're able to kind of share the message and see the wins that we have, because there's a lot of great success stories that are happening, and I'm a part of that. I'm talking about Olive Harvey College, but I reside in the same area in which I work, in the same area in which I grew up in. So I'm no different than any black man that's also from the southeast side of Chicago. But really being able to ensure that our black males are able to take somebody along with them for this ride. Some of the programming that we mentioned earlier that goes a little bit beyond transportation, distribution, and logistics is really also with, we have a 1 year and out program as well for our criminal justice. For anyone that's able to go into criminal justice, they are able to achieve their Associates of Applied Science in 1 year with the opportunity to work for the Chicago Police Department.
Wow.
Through this program that they're able to have their the written examination waived by going through this program. So a lot of this really relates to how we're able to focus on having more men of color that also represent and serve and protect. So I think that's really part of how we could do more of being very intentional about our programming and about what we do in the community. And a lot of that really relates to us knowing that the focal point has to be to wrap our arms around our brothers, our men.
Right.
Somebody
Danny, you
asked that last week, George.
We did.
Yeah.
We just talked about this last week. Danny, you have worked in this space, and we've talked a lot on the partnership show Brandon, around, what we coin is 51% of the responsibility resides on the person that's going to benefit.
Exactly.
And so the partnership, has these opportunities, 18.5 million reasons why we are bringing these services to our community, right?
That's good.
At the end of the day, what is the responsibility, again, that individuals have to seek out these programs? We see people all the time, and sometimes, I get reports as CEO that we service these number of individuals and these number of people dropped out, and I'm like, well, why did they drop out? What happened, right? And we find in most cases people don't make the appointments. They don't show up. They're late. And maybe we need to do a better job of making sure that we put them on a parallel path that gets them interested in what they're doing. Because if you just say this is an area that you need to go into, and they get halfway into it, and they go into CDL, and they find out that, well, I got that CDL license, but I didn't know I was going to have to do over-the-road travel and be away from my family, so the reality sets in now, right? So how do we actually make sure that we're intentional, Danny, about making sure people understand their responsibility to take advantages of opportunities that are provided, and at the same time make sure, Brandon, that we're connecting our programs? Once again, it starts about a human-centered design where we should be doing this not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of the people who are receiving these services.
That's good. I think if we, like you mentioned, George, allow the human-centered design to be the focus, and I think what happens is, as Brandon mentioned, with word of mouth and you saying social media, we have to look at what newer ways can we reach humans that we weren't able to reach them before. What new ways are we doing things, or what new or better practices can we engage in that can help us better reach people? We're now doing a radio show, which, by the way, thanks to you, George, is now being extended till April 27th. That's more time for us to spend on the radio discussing programs and the services that we offer. That's more time for people to hear about this program. And we're going to say this every week, Level Up AJC, because that's where it starts for some people. I think even doing a Level Up AJC campaign was another way for people to reach us that couldn't reach us before. What is an AJC? Who are you guys? The calls that we're getting in from the show, all the ways that the show that you're going on, the road that you're going on to talk about the services that we offer to the people. I think we're using those methods or as ways to engage people, where it just the other ways that we use, it's not that it didn't work, but we got to look at other ways to reach people. People are, as you said before, people are using social media now for information that they didn't use before. So we got to figure out where can people be reached, and that's what we use to target.
Yeah, I think that, Brandon, you can speak to this in terms of some of the cutting edge things that are happening at Olive Heartbeat, because you have a cutting edge facility, you have cutting edge instructors, you have cutting edge programs, and once again, who knew? I look at it from a very simplistic view that, there's mention of word of mouth, right? Yeah. Well, as a baby boomer, we grew up and we did talk to our neighbors, and there was an opportunity for word of mouth.
For sure.
Now, the neighbors' drapes are drawn and the curtain is closed. They're not talking to each other. Mm-mm. What do I want to talk to you for? Something happened on the neighborhood? I didn't see nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas before, everybody saw something, right? So now how do we reach people where they are? If they're not talking to each other in the barbershop or on the corner, right, because they don't want to be on the corner, but they're talking to each other through these social media platforms,
sure.
How do we make sure that our outreach, and again, we're making sure that we actually are communicating with people to the opportunities that exist? How do we make sure that we remain ahead of the curve as opposed to being drugged or dragged along behind the curve?
I think it's multiple avenues. I'm going to give just a few brief examples. One is our partnership that we have with Chicago Public Schools. So students that are a junior or senior are able to take college credit classes free of charge.
That's
and also
impressive.
Along with our Star Scholars, but a lot of what we're trying to do as well, that not just taking one class, but really a series of classes that may relate to them to transfer to a 4-year or to go directly into the field. So we have in most cases, for example, with aviation, we have a partnership with Chicago Public Schools in which they're able to send their students to Olive Heartbeat College in order to earn a basic certificate alongside the same time that they are able to earn their high school diploma. With CBCA and also with Curie, we specifically have for the vocation where you could earn your basic certificate in diesel or automotive technology, but alongside while you're in high school. So I think that's one example with being able to plant seeds. We're working with our youth for them to be able to be aware of all the opportunities that are aware to them. And we mentioned with just the resources, right? So just working with Urban League. Urban League sends a lot of their students that they have to Olive Harvey College to go into supply chain management. So it's really having multiple avenues of leveraging the college, leveraging our community, and the community partners. We mentioned about even our instructors. Many of our instructors reflect our community in which we serve. So they're primarily African American and Hispanic. In order to reflect the students in which we serve, you want to be able to see someone that looks just like you as far as that relatability. I think that's the part that for many of us that we gravitate toward people that we see, and that's something that we're very intentional about with our hiring practices. You mentioned about with just CDL, we actually have testing from the Secretary of State weekly, in which they actually have testing on site at the college.
I saw it.
So this allows to be able to remove those barriers. And the college itself really focuses on, we have an equity plan that really focuses on how we're able to break down those barriers. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the work of our Workforce Equity Initiative grant that we have at Olive Harvey College, in which it focuses specifically on students from particular area codes that are black and brown, on how they're able to receive free tuition along with wraparound support services. Because it's not just about the education, but the coaching the soft skills to prepare them for entering the workforce.
Who knew?
Again, who knew?
Right. So, and I'm going to get a caller in here quickly, but, I live by this mantra that I heard my dad say, my late father said it, and it resonates still today. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Hope, can we get you on the line now? Are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Welcome to the show.
I am one of those parents that has a son who has taken advantage of the early college program, the dual college enrollment there at Olive Harvey. He's taken advantage of the aviation mechanics. He graduates this spring from high school. He has 20 college credits. He has a certificate. He will have a certificate of aviation mechanics. He will sit for the federal exam, and he has the opportunity to be employed by the Ames Corporation at $75,000 a year while they pay for its bachelor's degree.
Wow.
How can he go wrong? He can't. What I've done as a parent, I've also talked up this program and referred several students to the program. So it's an excellent program they have going at Olive Harvey, and I must say that the counselors there, Cheryl Freeman, Miss Hurston, and there's several others, they do a good job of making sure that the students are taking advantage of every opportunity in terms of internships and other things that are offered in the program.
How'd you find out about the
program? Interestingly, it was a brochure in the library.
Well, that meant that somebody had to be in the library.
I was going
because if you didn't, if you weren't in the library, you would get the brochure.
Well, I saw it there. Actually, I was taking my 12. She was 11 at the time, 10 going on 11. We were in the library, and I saw this brochure, and I read it, and I'm like, "What? This is too good to be true."
Yeah.
I think I want to ask another question because, you have experienced the program live, and you talked about the benefits. But as a parent, what say you about your responsibility to seek out these types of initiatives and to provide? I always thought that as a parent, our main responsibility is to build runways so that our children can fly. And it sounds like it's it started way before the library encounter with this brochure. But Hope, what say you about this notion of making sure that as a parent, your responsibility to seek out programs, to expose your children or your child to those programs, and to support them? I think that's important for our WVON listeners to hear, because sometimes I think it goes underappreciated or unnoticed.
For sure.
Well, I will say this. I'm the beneficiary of the Southern Black college graduates who came up north to educate and teach in public schools. It was them who put me on the track towards proper education. So I'm part of the community. I'm a community beneficiary, and it's that I am giving back. So I'm just a product of that, Southern Black Historical Colleges. Although I did not go to one, it was those graduates that put me on the track in the path of righteousness.
I think it's an important point, and I will say, getting back to this whole education thing, because we could go off on this tangent. And thanks for your call, Hope. Really appreciate the call and the wisdom and the advice. You know, I've always felt that, you know, as we talk about Black History Month, right? I was with a bunch of black students, and I asked the question: does anybody in the room know who James Meredith was? And nobody knew. And so that kind of prompted me to say, who knew? Because many individuals going to schools today are only going there because of the work and the pioneering and him putting his life on the line, actually. Oh. So it's an interesting note that Hope described, where he talked about I'm a product of those that have come before me, who planted those trees so that we can enjoy the shade. You know, we're coming to the end of our show, Brandon, and I want to get you back in for a couple of questions and a couple of comments. You talked a little bit about this, but I want to make sure I get this out of you. Obviously, Dr. Nichols, you could be doing anything. You don't have to be working at Olive Harvey. What and why did you decide to come back to the community you grew up in to give back? Because there are so many people who choose not to do
that. Really, it's just a simple answer. I feel like it's what I'm supposed to do. Those are things that I feel how we're able to contribute toward growth and development, and the future is really about taking the knowledge and the skills and the ideology of being human-centered, being community-centered, and bring that back and passing that forward. So really it's truly something that it's not necessarily about status. It's not about finances. It's really about being a civic leader to engage and contribute into the neighborhood and the people in which we serve. I'm a member, a resident of the community, and so are our students. I am our students. Mm-hmm. I reflect our students, and so do everyone else that works at that college. We could all of us, so we think about when we were in school, we see a little bit of ourselves in each student, and this is how we're able to contribute by being mission-driven, student-centered, thinking about equity, and primarily focusing on our black and brown students to know that, you know what, we were in those seats. Mm. The struggles that we had, how we're able to pass that information forward. So every day when I come to work, it's not work. This is really just a passion that we all have, and not just myself, but everybody that work in that building, from the advisors to the deans to our custodians to our engineers. All of us, it's a sense of family. And really, when you walk through that door, and I think you mentioned it as well when you came to visit, it's a sense of family in which we all are able to contribute because we all represent that community. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that we no longer are a best-kept secret. Mm-hmm. Who knew? I will hope after this show that everyone knows that everything that we have to offer, and not just for TDL, but for the entire building, for urban agriculture, for our cannabis program, for criminal justice, for anyone that's looking to take their general education classes to then transfer, for our child development program, our child care center, our middle college that we have a pantry that's also a partnership, going back to partnership, mm-hmm. but being, again, transformational versus transactional, that is on site because we know we have food barriers with our students. Same thing, we have transportation barriers in which students are able to receive a venture card, both full-time and part-time students, and able to commute back and forth, whether it's on the 106 or on the 28 right. CTA bus. But again, we know that because we represent the community, so we try to break down as many barriers as possible to make sure that we allow students the path to be able to earn an education. Because it's not just about the education, but it's transforming that entire family.
Exactly. Right. So, it sounds like to me, in the last minute, I'll make this comment that if we had more people, especially our younger people, in my opinion, that have figured out what you just said, we'd be much further along. Because what you described to me is that somehow, some way, you understood that it goes beyond when you were born, and you have to figure out why you were born. This is your purpose, and there's a lot of people who haven't figured out why. And until we get to the point where they figure out why, then it becomes a passion and becomes something that they can excel at, and it becomes something that they can actually give back to the communities, right? And so for us, it was a pleasure and an honor to have you, Dr. Nichols, on the show.
Thank you so much.
A young black man, as Gil Scott Heron said, come on down, sit beside us. We will share everything we own. Because at the end of the day, if we don't do that, who will and who knew? And so, like you said, after this show, Danny, hopefully people understand that Olive Harvey College is not that little college that's set on the hill that you drive past and see when you're going past 99th Street or 95th Street. It is a transformative type of place that you can come, be treated with courtesy, dignity, and respect, and understand all the programs there. Thank you, Dr. Nichols, for coming.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it. So we actually end our show, and that's going to happen in about 20 seconds, with this song that comes on each and every Saturday. And I think that it goes back to Who Knew. The song is called Open Our Eyes.
Open Our Eyes.
Thank you, WVON listeners. See you next Saturday. Thank you, Dr. Nichols. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you.
Father, open eyes.